Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
If you are interested in serving on your local Federal Subsistence Regional Advisory Council, the deadline to apply is Friday, March 21st. The councils provide information and recommendations to the Federal Subsistence Board on subsistence hunting, trapping, and fishing. For more information on the advisory councils and how to apply, call 1-800-478-1456 or email subsistence@fws.gov. This message sponsored by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge is a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services with a primary marketing focus on the Port of Anchorage, providing their customers with quality-based service specifically tailored to their needs.
It's never too early to set expectations and goals for your child's education. The UA College Savings Plan provides opportunities that can help you reach your educational savings goals. Save in Alaska. Study anywhere. There is more information available by calling 1-888, the number 4, and then Alaska. This message sponsored by the UA College Savings Plan.
The National Weather Service.
Good Tuesday, everyone. I'm Meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It is the 11th of March. As always, we welcome you to Alaska Weather with a reminder to check your local weather information by heading to our website at weather.gov/Alaska or arh.noaa.gov. You can call the Weather Info line at 800-472-0391. Find each Weather Service office on Twitter, on Facebook under U.S. National Weather Service Alaska, and on YouTube. During the afternoon, you'll get your daily afternoon map briefing about 3:45 to 4 o'clock or so. And then after this show on alaskapublic.org, our broadcast partner here, you can find the entire broadcast on YouTube. Simply go to the search bar on YouTube, type in AKWX-TV, or go to their website, alaskapublic.org, and look for the most recent broadcasts there on the right-hand side of your screen. Quite a bit still going on across parts of southeast tonight, dealing mainly with rain now for most of the inner channels and coastal areas all the way up to Yakutat. Several inches of rain possible across some of the southern inner channels as we go into the next 24 to 48 hours. A little bit higher up toward Hyder, though, winter weather advisory continues in that area, looking for another good dumping of snow, probably will continue through tonight and into tomorrow. So winter weather advisory for some of the higher terrain there. Working back towards south central, winter storm watch there for, let me try this one more time. We have a blizzard watch for the Alaska Peninsula. I'm jumping the gun just a little bit here. This is a high wind watch for the eastern side of the Kenai Peninsula, including the Portage Valley area. So we're looking for some gusts once again to start up tomorrow and into tomorrow night. And we're also watching for high winds around the Thompson Pass area, so watch for that. High wind watches again posted for tomorrow and tomorrow night. The winds could come up to about 65 to 75 miles per hour in some of those areas. So again, the winds expected to come back up after they have been rather blustery today. Looking further northward there, these are wind advisories for the Denali area and the eastern parts of the Alaska Range. Also looking for some strong gust potential there. Gusts mainly in the passes and east of the Tok Cutoff. Probably looking at about 60 miles an hour or so. Looking farther northward, wind chill advisories around the Point Barrow out toward Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse region. Wind chill values there could go as low as 45 to 50 below with just a little bit of moving wind, so be extra careful in those areas. And for the Kotzebue Sound area, also looking at wind chill advisories. In some cases, the wind chill value could go as low as 50 below, maybe even colder across some of the coastal areas. We were looking at wind chill warnings earlier. I believe that are still in effect for Wainwright and the western Arctic coast. Didn't make it on the map for some reason, but those values could go as low as 70 below. So a wind chill warning there around the western Arctic coast between Point Hope and Wainwright there. That'll go through at least 10 o'clock tonight. Looking farther south and west, you got a tease of that earlier. Blizzard watch now for the Alaskan Peninsula. That's going to include the Cold Bay, False Pass, King Cove, Sand Point area. Looking at several inches of snow and some gusty winds that will come up as we get into the next 24 hours or so. This is going to include Wednesday and Wednesday night, all due to the low pressure system working toward the western parts of the Gulf. Again, poor visibility and accumulating snow all possible there as we head into Wednesday. And a wind advisory, I believe, is out now for the eastern parts of the Aleutian. So an awful lot going on in all different parts of Alaska, all due to really the same series of storms that's working into the Gulf, whether it's the cold side or the warm side of the storm that you're on. Here's a look at the pattern across the North Pacific, and you can see circulation here working toward the central Aleutians. This is the next storm in this series that's working toward the Gulf now, and you can see several other disturbances tracking all the way back into eastern Asia. Cold wind still wrapping down into the main storm track, which is well south of Alaska. Here you can see that kind of the banding or the streaking stretching the cloud cover around the upper level circulation that we'll see here in the jet stream map in just a moment. Take a look at this around the Gulf in the north and western parts here. Here is the circulation working its way into south central, but there's another piece to this. This is where the atmospheric river is, that main channel of very high moisture content air that's working into southeastern Alaska. It's just wringing out the moisture right now, as it usually seems to do across southeast. In this case, we started out with some snow, and now we've attached that warmer and wetter air to your weather puzzle. And with that, it looks like you'll have at least another good solid day of rainfall tomorrow. Some of the higher train there again around Hyder, looking at several inches of snow. I believe in some cases your storm totals could be pushing somewhere on the order of 9 to maybe 13 inches by the time it's said and done around Hyder. And as you look into the interior, you can see cloud cover also spreading northward, and that's bringing that warm and wet air further and further north. Now, if you look at a temperature map here with me in a moment, you're going to notice a really big shift, though, right here around the Brooks Range. The coastal plain considerably colder than anywhere else across Alaska, as it usually is. That cold, dense air just can't get scrubbed away, just yet anyway, by that south to northward moving air across the interior even. But we're starting to see that warm up slowly shift northward. However, the west coast still under that influence of that strong northerly flow making its way through the Bering Strait. And with that, even on, as we've been hearing around the historic Iditarod Trail, folks there in Norton Sound, the Yukon River, and all the way out toward Nome, dealing with some pretty treacherous conditions, whether it's whiteout conditions, blowing and drifting snow, or just some brutal wind chills there. That will continue there across the Seward Peninsula and especially points north. Here's a look at the surface map. A 976 millibar low around Cook Inlet. That is slowly working its way northward, bringing with it colder air now across the Alaska Peninsula. You can see snow showers there across Cape Newingham. Also across the Seward Peninsula, another wave of low pressure trying to spin up there at 989 millibars, and also across southeast. That's the part that's attached to that atmospheric river, that very high moisture content air again that's working its way towards southeast, and snow again across the higher train. Here's our next storm at 967 millibars, working its way eastward fairly quickly tonight. Winds will come up as we head into the morning tomorrow for parts of south central as the storm quickly moves into position. Colder air trying to work its way eastward, having a little trouble thanks to that northward moving storm, but warmer air nudging up against the Brooks Range, and southeast still dealing with the potential of heavy rain as we head into tonight and tomorrow. Here's the next storm by Wednesday afternoon, 966 millibars south of the Alaska Peninsula, so again a blizzard watch posted for you. Southeasterly flow strengthening across the Kenai Peninsula and Prince William Sound, and more rain working through southeast as we head through your Wednesday afternoon. That rain and snow line hugging the coastline and the higher train very, very sharply there, so a pretty sharp contrast for some that could see snow showers across south central to rain out over the Gulf and southeast. And again, some pretty tight pressure gradients here, so wind not only for the central and eastern Aleutians, but the Alaska Peninsula. And then things really slow down as you head up the west coast. The Yukon still looking at scattered snow showers and maybe some breezy conditions for the Seward Peninsula, flurries and low clouds for parts of the northern interior and the coastal plain. And once you get into Thursday, the storm shifts into Kodiak Island and the southern tip of the Kenai at 972 millibars. The occlusion kind of spreading out. The wind filling in just a little bit here, but we've got a pretty strong northerly and northwesterly gradient coming across the peninsula, so snow and wind will continue if you're in Cold Bay, False Pass, and King Cove, and more rain for southeast as the triple point nears coastal sections of southeast. This is usually a pretty good spot to pick out some heavy rainfall, and so areas north of Sitka to Juneau, probably Yakutat, we'll look at some higher rainfall intensities likely as you go into Thursday. As warmer air tries to work its way into the coastal plain, you'll see temperatures maybe go up a little bit there around Kaktovik if you can scrub out some of that coldest air you have now. 30s and 40s for southeast today. A fairly mild day, but certainly a wet one. Juneau around 43. Ketchikan and Annette also in the mid 40s. South Central around Prince William Sound, 30s and 40s there. Kodiak Island 44 in Kodiak itself. 36 in Fairbanks, 41 in Denali, 40 in Fort Greely. Eagle is looking at 41 degrees with Glen Allen around 39. And points north of Fairbanks looking at single digits and teens mostly. Now, if the wind was moving, of course, that really knocked down what it felt like. And nowhere else was that effect really seen there across the Arctic coast today than what you notice around Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse out to Barrow, Atkasuk, Wainwright, anywhere from 15 to as cold as 30 below, with wind chills again that could be as cold as 50 to 70 below, especially along the western Arctic coast. Seward Peninsula and Kotzebue Sound around 0, maybe 5 to 10 below in some cases. Norton Sound looking at 6 to 7 degrees there around Unalakleet, and 9 in Grayling. Looked like McGrath was about 12. Bethel showing 9 degrees. The Pribilofs in the teens today. Bristol Bay 20s and 30s for the most part. The Alaska Peninsula considerably colder in the mid-20s with that north and northwesterly flow that will continue, and just shy of 30 for the central and western parts of the chain. Overnight low temperatures will hover about the same spot there for the chain in the Alaska Peninsula. Closer to 10 degrees around Dillingham and King Salmon. Bethel 6 below, Nome 10 below, the Arctic coast 25 to 30 below with again dangerous wind chills there. 5 to 15 above for the central interior and the Tanana Valley. 14 in Eagle. Northway still looking at some colder weather, closer to 0. South Central hovering just above or below the freezing point as that low pressure works its way northward. We'll get in a little bit cooler weather than what we saw last night. Mid to upper 30s for southeast and 40s for the extreme southern parts around Hyder and Ketchikan and Annette. Even Craig looking at temperatures closer to 40 degrees. The same goes for Klawock. High temperatures tomorrow back in the mid to upper 40s for most parts of southeast. Again, dealing with rain. Low to mid 30s for parts of South Central and Prince William Sound. Kodiak 38. 29 in Fairbanks. Areas around Delta Junction likely hovering in the upper 20s tomorrow. 36 in Eagle though. Teens for most areas on the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range, the Koyuk Valley. 14 degrees there in Ambler. Bettles around 22. Fairbanks, again, looking at 29. Compare that to Barrow at 9 below. Kaktovik looking at 6 below. Nome 2 below. Kotzebue, temperatures could be a little bit milder there at 1 above. A little bit cooler there around Kivalina, Point Hope, and Point Lay. Bethel at 4 above. Bristol Bay looking at 20s and 30s tomorrow. Most of the peninsula also looking at temperatures just above freezing. The chain, though, should be below. Flying weather shows a wide swath of IFR along the western Alaska Range, Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound, Kodiak Island, and the Alaska Peninsula tomorrow. Also around the western parts of the Brooks Range and the northern sections of the Seward Peninsula and the western Arctic coast, MVFR, just about everywhere else except for the Yukon Valley and south. Anaktuvik Pass expected to turn over to MVFR conditions. Same goes for Adigan Pass tomorrow. However, we do expect a return to IFR perhaps by late in the day. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass should see IFR conditions through a large part of the day. Rainy Pass may see some improvement toward the afternoon. Windy Pass expected to turn over to VFR conditions with a lot of wind moving through the northern parts of the Alaska Range tomorrow. Isabel Pass, VFR, expect some bumps there. And as we go into Mentasta Pass, still looking at some breezy conditions there, maybe some chop, but VFR conditions should prevail. Tanita Pass also may be at least some light to isolated moderate turbulence. IFR conditions should improve throughout the day, and we expect Portage Pass to see MVFR conditions with IFR lingering on the eastern side. Chilkoot and White Pass may see some improvement, but again, some pretty choppy weather flowing through most of southeast. Here's the freezing levels now. You can see that cold line certainly dropping south of the Alaskan Peninsula and that warm and wet air working up through southeast at this point. Icing potential below 7,000 feet should remain relatively light across the western parts of the Brooks Range, and will have a better chance for some occasional moderate working its way along the frontal boundary into Kodiak and perhaps a little bit farther in to south central southeast right now. Looking fairly wet. You'll have to go pretty high to find that icing potential there. Jet stream shows our low pressure system diving into the central Bering Sea, the main corridor of the storm track across the central Pacific, and then working its way into southeast. But this has grabbed a hold of that very wet air and works itself into the southeastern parts fairly quickly. At 9,000 feet, we've got a good southerly flow working across most of the state and southeast. 2 areas of low pressure to focus on, one south of the Alaska Peninsula, another one south of the Bering Strait, and that puts in most of the Bering in a pretty persistent northerly flow and some shifting winds there across the west coast. At 3,000 feet again, we see our broad southerly flow across the eastern 2/3 of the state and our northerly flow across the central and western Bering Sea. Look for some areas of turbulence there across the Alaskan Peninsula again as the slow pressure system works its way toward the north and east and slowly southward across the Bering Strait and toward Nunivak Island there. So a stronger wind working away across the Alaska range for sure, and expect some turbulence in those areas as a result. Below 10,000 feet, you may find some of that, occasional to moderate, perhaps across the Alaska Range, the lower to mid Yukon Valley, also across the Alaska Peninsula, generally below 5,000 feet. Low-level wind shear and gap flow issues are going to become a problem as we go through tomorrow. Around Kodiak Island, don't be surprised to run into some widespread moderate in that area, also across the central and northern Gulf, and at least light to isolated moderate across the northern half of southeast, but again, gap flow issues and low-level wind shear should be an issue there across southeastern parts of Alaska. That's a quick check of your aviation forecast. We'll be back with a look at your marine weather here in just a few minutes.
You too can be a Top Gun now that you've got all this TAF stuff down. So let's put it all together, show your stuff, and look at a complete example. And let's start with this TAF for Oklahoma City, KOKC. Looks like a lot of stuff here, but it's a lot easier than it looks at first glance. First of all, the what, it's a TAF, it's not been amended. This particular forecast is for Oklahoma City, OKC, with the K in front for the ICAO identifier. The when, first of all, we have the when issued, and we always know that that's got the Z for Zulu time. It was issued on the 5th day of the month at 11:30 Zulu. The second part of the when is when it's valid for use. It's valid on the 5th day of the month from 1200 Zulu to 1200 Zulu on the next day of the month, the 6th day of the month, a 24-hour period. And remember, these days start at midnight in Greenwich, England. The wind is our next grouping here, 5 digits in this case. The wind is from 140 degrees true at a wind speed of 8 knots. And our knots remind us that that's our wind information. The visibility is 5 statute miles visibility. That's what they're forecasting us to have. As far as the weather is concerned, the only precipitation or obstruction to visibility is BR, is mist. On the sky conditions, we have broken clouds at 3,000 feet, and that's going to be our ceiling. That's what they're forecasting that for us to have. Now, we've got some changes happening. Temporarily. Now, temporarily means generally for less than 1 hour at a time, and in total for less than half the time period. And the time period specified here is between 1300 Z and 1600 Z. So temporarily during that time period, the visibility will drop to 1 1/2 statute miles in mist. Then we have a from. We have from 1600 Zulu. The wind is forecast to be 270 degrees true at 15 knots, gusting to 22 knots. Getting a little windy out there, and the visibility is forecast to be 3 statute miles in blowing dust. The good part about it is the SKC means the sky is going to be clear. That part is nice. Then we have a becoming. Becoming between 1900 and 2100 Zulu, the weather is forecast to change. What's it going to change to? It's going to change to winds from 250 degrees at a wind speed of 7 knots. And the visibility is going to go to 4 statute miles in rain showers. RA for rain, SH for showers. The clouds will go to an overcast at 2,000 feet. Then we've got a probability. The probability in this case is 30% that the following is going to happen. And the probability exists between 0 Zulu and 600 Zulu. What is that probability calling for? It is 30% probable that the visibility will drop to 1/2 statute mile in thunderstorms and heavy rain. Remember, the plus goes with the precipitation with the rain and fog. And that the clouds will come down to 500 feet overcast with CBs with cumulonimbus. Then we've got another weather change becoming between 600 and 800 Zulu. A wind from 210 degrees true at a wind speed of 10 knots. The visibility is forecast to improve. The P6SM is plus 6 statute miles, or visibility forecast to be greater than 6 statute miles. NSW for no significant weather, basically canceling out the previously forecast precipitation. So that's canceling out the previously forecast thunderstorms with heavy rain and the rain showers. We're going to have no significant weather from here on. The equals at the end, of course, is simply the end of report identifier. And now you've got METAR TAF down cold.
Boy, it sure seems hot out here.
Well, of course it seems hot. You're wearing a parka. Why are you wearing a parka?
Well, because the temperature's only 15 degrees.
John, that's a METAR report. The temperatures are in Celsius. If you take that number and double it and then add 30, you'll find the temperature in Fahrenheit's about 60 degrees.
Oh, 60 degrees. No wonder it seems so hot.
Well, that wraps up METAR TAF Made Easy. We hope you had fun with it, because we sure did.
Folks, have fun in your flying, and by all means, please,
stay out of the trees.
Now, if you want to test your hands at that METAR code, you can go to our website anytime, weather.gov/Alaska, and those METAR codes are listed on the left-hand side under the link for observations. Almost sounded like one of the kings there when I said it like that, didn't I? Yeah. Let's go to southeast weather now. Here's a look at the southeasterly flow working up the inner channels, southwesterlies moving through Stevens Passage and the Frederick Sound area around 15 knots. A stronger southerly flow working through the North and Southland Canal around 25 knots with a 5-foot sea. With that southerly flow, of course, we're bringing in more rain to coastal areas from Sitka, Gustavus, up toward Yakutat around 20 knots, and seas running between 15 and even 18 feet coming into the Dixon entrance there with that westerly flow. Winds are going to shift on Thursday, more of a broad southeasterly flow working through the region, except for the Lynn Canal. That's going to switch around to a northerly flow at 20 knots. Seas offshore running between 18 and 20 feet. In the inner channels there, 4 to 5 foot seas are expected on Thursday. For South Central now, that's more of a southwesterly flow north of the Cook Inlet region and into the Resurrection Bay area, into Prince William Sound, around 20 to 25 knots or so, 13 to 15 foot seas expected, 4 foot seas on the inside. Southeasterly flow coming across Cook Inlet. This is all feeding into low pressure here, so if you're looking at this going, wow, that looks like a mess of a wind pattern there, it is, because low pressure is working itself north and east as we go through the day. So not only is this a mess right now, but it's going to be changing throughout the day. So if you are going out to sea, make sure you're paying attention to the conditions as they start and have a way to access weather information while you're out on the boat. A southeasterly flow coming into the Kodiak Island area at 40 knots with 16 foot seas. Watch what happens on Thursday. Everything's wrapping around even more into that low pressure system now, working its way closer and closer to Kodiak Island and the Kenai Peninsula. Northerly flow coming down the Cook Inlet between 25 and 35 knots into the Shelikof Strait region at 20 knots. Southeasterlies working itself into the Barren Islands at 25 knots with a 14-foot sea. And storms out there outside of Prince William Sound, 45 knots with an 18-foot sea. Inside Prince William Sound, winds could come up to 40 knots sustained with a 9-foot sea and higher gusts around the Copper River Basin. For the Alaska Peninsula, expecting storm force winds there south of Sand Point and King Cove, 13-foot seas there, and up toward Kodiak Island. Northeasterly flow at 50 knots with an 18-foot sea. Northerlies inside Bristol Bay and coming into the Alaska Peninsula at 35 knots with freezing spray. Winds shift to more of a northwesterly flow there. 10 to 12-foot seas are expected. Again, freezing spray possible there, and also shifting across into the Pacific with that stronger northwesterly flow developing on Thursday. So some changes coming your way on Thursday. For the Aleutians, a north and northeasterly flow anywhere from 20 to 35 knots, 45 knots are south of Nikolsky and Unalaska. 13-foot seas are expected there. And getting some stronger breezes there across the west and west central area, 25 to 30 knots with a 12 to 14-foot sea. As we get into Thursday, north and northwesterlies coming across the Aleutians now, anywhere from 20 to about 30 knots, 35 knots on the south side, 11 to 15-foot seas are expected, and across the west and central parts, anywhere from 9 to 10-foot seas with 25 to 30-knot winds by Thursday. Across the west coast, 20 to 25-knot winds for most areas. Winds coming up outside of Kuskokwim Bay with freezing spray possible there. Once again, we have filled in a large part of the water around St. Matthew Island. So now we're just showing ice instead of a sea forecast. 7 to 8-foot seas there outside of Kuskokwim Bay out toward the Pribilofs with a 20-knot wind on a northerly flow. North and northwesterly flow continues for the Bering on Thursday, anywhere from 20 to as high as 40-knot winds outside of Kuskokwim Bay. And freezing spray will remain a threat as we go toward the end of the week south of the ice edge. And for the Arctic coast, east and northeasterly winds working around the Beaufort and the Chukchi Seacoast. Not only that, but dangerous wind chills on top of flurries and low clouds. Northerlies outside of Kotzebue Sound at 30 knots, a northeasterly flow around Cape Lisburne and Point Hope. Winds subside somewhat across the Chukchi Seacoast. An easterly flow around the Beaufort, 10 to 15 knots will continue that dangerous wind chill. A wind chill advisory is in effect right now for many parts of the central Beaufort Seacoast, and wind chill warnings for the western Arctic coast, where values could go as low as 70 below tonight. Looking at the weather map one more time, southeast looking at some heavy rain. Some flood advisories are posted for the northern parts of the Gulf Coast there, including areas around Yakutat tonight, I believe. Otherwise, streams may reach close to Bankful across a large part of southeast. At last check, there were not any flood warnings or watches posted. That could change, though, depending on how heavy the rain gets. Look for areas around Hyder to see a winter weather advisory, as snow totals there could reach up to about 15 inches of snow in some cases, so plan for more snow there. Flurries and scattered snow showers across the west and west central areas. The main concern for the Arctic coast, mainly poor visibility at times across the west, and the Arctic coast dealing with wind chill values that could go as low as 70 below. A blizzard watch posted for the Alaska Pen as we get into tomorrow, and high winds and snow for Thompson Pass and South Central. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather Tonight.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
It's never too early to set expectations and goals for your child's education. The UA College Savings Plan provides opportunities that can help you reach your educational savings goals. Save in Alaska. Study anywhere. There is more information available by calling 1-888, the number 4, and then Alaska. This message sponsored by the UA College Savings Plan.
If you are interested in serving on your local Federal Subsistence Regional Advisory Council, the deadline to apply is Friday, March 21st. The councils provide information and recommendations to the Federal Subsistence Board on subsistence hunting, trapping, and fishing. For more information on the advisory councils and how to apply, call 1-800-478-1456 or email subsistence@fws.gov. This message sponsored by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.